What's up, Red Letter Disciples? We're back again. I'm Zach Zinder, co-host of the Red Letter Disciple, and in a couple of minutes, I'll be joined by Chris Johnson, my friend and co-host. And our desire is that this podcast would challenge you to be a greater disciple of Jesus. And that's what our guest today, Katherine Norland, is really passionate about. We believe that there is no greater calling than to be a great disciple of Jesus. And Katherine, she loves helping people step up into their calling. Katherine is an actress in Hollywood, and she has more than 100 credits to her name. She'll talk about what it's like to be a disciple in Hollywood. How do you deal? Like, we see her for the 100 things that she's been on. That means 100 times she's been said yes through auditions and talking with producers and directors. But behind that is about 900 times where she's been told no. So how do you overcome rejection? What does that do to your self-thought? Do you have self-doubt? She deals with all of this and really helps people learn how to step into their calling. So it's going to be a great episode. Today's episode is brought to you by Disciple Making Playbook. In 2023, I was cooking up behind the scenes for a good portion of the year, an online course that launched to help churches, especially pastors and church leaders, develop a disciple-making playbook or strategy at your church that all the people in your church can get excited about. In 2022, Lifeway Research did a study, and they found the number one need expressed by pastors that they said they were willing to invest in is disciple making. So what does that say? That says we know we need to learn more about it, and we're willing to invest in it. And so I'd love for you to invest in the Disciple Making Playbook, because we've ran through it with 25 students and heard great results. One of those students was Tana Heineman, and she is the discipleship director at Good News Church here in Omaha, Nebraska. And she said the Disciple Making Playbook is very well done. Not only are the videos relatable and enjoyable to learn from, but the content is well thought out and applicable to today's ever-evolving church. She says the gospel is the same, but our culture has shifted dramatically, even in the past 5 years. And so helping people grow as true disciples of Jesus has never been more important. And so church leaders and pastors, if you want to grow disciples, if you want to elevate both the quality and the quantity of disciples at your church, this is the course for you. You can check out more at disciplemakingplaybook.com. And through the month of March, we are giving you $100 off of this course. And so enter podcast DMP at checkout to get this course for only $297. I'd love to see you in the course. Again, go to disciplemakingplaybook.com and you can see everything laid out on what you're going to get in this course. It's going to change your church, guarantee it. So hey, we're pretty pumped about today's episode. If you have not yet, would you take a moment to subscribe or follow on whatever platform you're listening or watching? And if you got a couple extra minutes, would you tap 5 stars for us and write a quick review and let us know how this podcast has been helpful, or has it been helpful for you in challenging you in your faith? So without further ado, let's do this. Well, we got a great episode today on Red Letter Disciple. We got Katherine Norland in the house. Actually, not in the house. She's in her house, but it's going to be awesome. Katherine is an actress with over 100 credits. She's a best-selling author with 5 books, a life coach, a motivational speaker, and a filmmaker, mom of 2 boys.
Wait, how does she even have time to do any of that?
Right, and she's married to her teenage crush. Amazingly, interestingly, she's the first actress, Chris, to appear in 100 Dhar videos, which is the insanely popular YouTube channel. We're going to talk to her about that with more than 20 million subscribers. And she's got a heart for people, why she's on the podcast today. Help people overcome their self-doubt, so that they can step into their calling and make a lasting impact in this world. Katherine, welcome to Red Letter Disciple. It is so great to have you with us today.
Wow, thank you, Zach and Chris. It's so good to be here.
Yeah. All right. So before we get into what you're writing and how you're helping people step into their calling, which I want to talk about that, because that's really where our podcast aligns with, I think, your mission, your vision. I want to talk about Dhar for our listeners today, maybe who don't know who Dhar is. First, explain like what Dhar is, and then I'd love to hear your opinion on why Dhar is so successful in our world with all the content out there. Like, how is his channel, this channel, Dhar, standing out so much?
Well, what it is, it's kind of like back in the day I don't know if this was like in the 90s. They had something called after school specials.
I just said that to Zach. I was watching some of these and I was like, Zach, this feels like I just got home. It's 3:30. I'm on the couch and it's like an after school special, you know, or The More You Know, something like that. Yes.
It teaches like life lessons, how to be kind to others, how not to judge a book by its cover. Just really heartfelt stories. And I think, you know, sometimes it's a little dramatic because, you know, it's on you. It's not a big feature film, so we can get a little fun and carried away and go over the top. Sometimes I like to refer to it as a inspirational soap opera. But it's so much fun. And for the age group, you know, it's the ones on YouTube appeal to middle school and high school, but we also have a Facebook division that's more of the adult stories. So that's more of grown-ups who are like, what are they going through? They find out their spouse is cheating on them, or, you know, they're going through divorce, they're having money problems. They're, you know, it's more of whatever the adults are going through. So he started another channel on YouTube called the Dhar Bonus Channel. And the bonus channels where the more adult stories are. But the reason I think it's successful is, man, how much content out there is so negative and pulls you down. And even if they're trying to put a message out, is that message something you really want your kids to see and hear? Is it the direction that you want them to go, or what you want indoctrinated into their mind? And we're all looking for positive, uplifting stories, because I think life is just hitting us on every side. You know, it's getting a lot darker out there, and it's nice to tune into something where you go, you know what, it's going to be fun. I'm going to get a little story out of it, but it's also going to be entertaining. And, you know, some of the episodes are like edge of your seat. Like I just did one where I had to do my own stunts.
Oh, wow. What'd you do?
I mean, I fell down in the driveway multiple times and fell down with some guys chasing me.
Do it again, Katherine. Fall down again. Yes.
I'm getting chased with an axe. I'm jumping through windows. And then we just shot an episode at a trampoline park. And that was a tough one because I felt like God had called me to do some fasting. So I was on day like 4 or 5 of my fast, and I'm having to jump on the trampoline all day. I'm like,
Bad day to fast.
I had to keep up with these 14-year-olds. So I was like doing flips and like, I'm like, I really need a cracker or something.
This is funny because like, as we talk, we've never spoken before, but when I hear you talk, like I get this vibe of like June, like a younger June Cleaver. Like you're so sweet and so nice. And then I saw we watched the episode where you walk in and you're like, I'm a size 10. They should be in the back. Like the lady doesn't have the right dress for you. And you're like, just kind of, I'm like, wow, she's like hardcore. You're a great actress. Cause I watched a couple episodes. I'm like, who are we interviewing again? So that's cool. Very well done.
Thank you.
I think it's fascinating too, because I think the narrative is, and I think there is some truth to it, that humanity is more pulled toward negative news or towards news that, right,
polarizing,
cynical, right?
Like cynical.
If it bleeds, it leads, sort of thing. Yeah. And here you have this other channel that is telling positive stories, and
it's almost like it's a lost art at this point. You know, like I teach a lot. I teach like high school, and I'll walk in. I'm like, you guys are so cynical. Stop it. Like everybody loves to like hate on stuff. Like, you know, the perfect example is sweet little Taylor Swift, whether you like her or not. She's in there, you know, partying, and everybody's like, I hate Taylor Swift. Like it's become cool to hate. You know, well, it's become cool to like hate on positivity. It's become cool to be cynical. So I think that's a breath of fresh air that somebody's actually producing something that kind of brings us back. You know, I'm 50 years old, kind of brings us back to like coming home from school and getting a positive message and with good acting, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think the key is then? Because I think there are others out there that they want to tell a positive story. They want to share good news, and it's not, I don't know, resonating or catching on like it ought. And so what encouragement would you give to those I guess, content creators out there?
Well, there's a couple ways to look at it. And, if you are doing what you feel like you were made to do, what God put in your heart, and you have these stories and you want to tell them, tell them. And, we get so caught up in the numbers sometimes. We think it's about the viewership or how many, like just the other day I was thinking, man, I've had my YouTube channel. I've been consistently putting out content on my Katherine Norland page for like 5 years. I only have like 250 people look at this video. And I was getting a little bummed out because I'm looking at, Dhar Mann's numbers, and he's got like within 24 hours, there's millions of people who've seen it.
Yeah.
And then I had to stop myself and say, you know what? I'm just giving life advice, coaching videos on how to, fulfill your dreams. And 250 people, if I had 250 people show up to my house and come to my living room and want to hear me teach them how to follow their dreams, that's huge. I wouldn't be scoffing at that, but it's so easy to go, oh, the number, but if you had that many people in your living room, you would be ecstatic. You're like, I can't believe 250 people showed up to hear from me.
Yeah,
so I think, sometimes we get a little cynical or jaded, like you mentioned, because we're just so used to these big numbers. And, God can bring the audience when he decides to bring the audience. And YouTube is one of those beautiful platforms that it will live on forever, until they shut it down. So maybe God decides to reveal you 5 years from now. Look at what you've done. You've got a body of work out there. You've got hundreds of videos by this time that people can then go back and find. Now that I've come out on Dhar Mann, people are finding me. They're going back and watching movies I did 10, 15 years ago, So when God decides to reveal you, he will. Sometimes, I think it's like we're like this giant what are those, like a glacier under the sea? And people can only see the little tip of us, and they think, oh, they snicker at us. You're so little, you're so small, you're not going to amount to anything. But when God decides to recede the waters and that big like ice glacier is revealed, like we've always been there, but God's been preparing us and getting us ready for what's to come. And, like scripture says, you can't despise humble beginnings or small beginnings.
Yeah, and I think that you brought up something. I think there's a lot of pastors out there that would be thrilled to have 250 people at a service, at one time. Also, the other thing you brought up was something that I've struggled with, and I know we've probably all struggled with as Christians. Is like I feel like you produce something, you make some content, and you put it out there. And then you see somebody else produce content, and then you start comparing yourself. And I feel like that's where like Satan comes in. He's like, you're just wasting your time. You're just not. No, man, you're not. And Zach does something really cool. He's got his Bible, and he writes down notes as he's going through, and he wants to give those. He's going to give one to each of his sons, And I think that's really cool, because when he's long gone, they'll still have, his Bible. And I think about that as, you putting out something positive, having two boys, like when we're all long gone, our people, our families can listen to this and maybe be inspired by our words. So one of the things, your dream is to help other people step into their calling, into their dreams, which is incredibly admirable. How have you seen this play out in your own life? Like, talk about some of the people that have helped you get to the point where you are, and why do you want to hand that down to the next generation?
Well, I spent so many years just unsure of myself, so much crippling self-worth issues and doubt, and I didn't go after the things that God put in my heart because I didn't feel like I was qualified. I didn't feel like I was smart enough, and I gathered all this information to prove myself right. And that's what we always do. We always try to prove ourselves right. And we gather evidence, even if it's completely negative. You go to auditions and the casting director's like, you're too ugly, you're too fat, you're too this, your voice is annoying, you're too old, whatever it is. And so you start to stack up all these things and have proof of why you can't do what you're called to do, and you sabotage yourself. And it's just so detrimental, and it's not how we were designed. I don't think God designed us to have that doubt. He wanted us to have belief, and he wanted us to, when he calls us to do something, that we step into it and we believe that we can do it. And any voice telling you otherwise is not from him. You know, anytime there's fear, that's not of God, because perfect love casts out fear. So any of these fears and doubts, we have to realize they're not coming from us, and they're not the truth. They're coming from the father of lies. And you mentioned something about comparison. The funny thing is, when we compare ourselves, we are never comparing the good things in us to somebody else. It's always the negative. Like when I would go to an audition, oh, she's prettier, oh, she's thinner, oh, she's young, whatever it is. We're never going, I'm actually better at it. And it was just all negative. And when we compare, we're not content, no matter what we've got. When seeing through an envy lens, it's always what we've not. And so we just can't do that. I don't even know if I answered your question, but
that's really good. But so you're in an occupation where you might get 95% no's, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so you've got to keep pushing through, and you've got to fight against those attacks. I mean, if you get 1 or 2 incredible roles, like that's a home run in your field. Like it's such a small percentage. It's like if a baseball player is a really good baseball player, they might hit 350. If you're a really good actress, I'm right. Yeah. If you're a really good actress, you might hit 100. You might hit 10% of the roles. So you've got that negative self-doubt talk coming a lot. Who's been some of the people that have helped you navigate that through? I mean, you've had 100 roles. This is a big deal, and which means you probably got 500, 600 no's. Like, you know what I mean?
I'm probably closer to 800. I've had at least 800 or 900 auditions. So one of the people that helped me the most, ironically enough, it's February, and I was just putting together a video for Black History Month, because the main person that helped me when I first moved to Hollywood was this Black man. He was an agent and manager. He used to be he used to represent Tootie from Facts of Life.
Oh, you take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have.
Yes, that's the one.
That's really good. Wow.
I love that show. My first crush was Blair.
Oh, yes. Well,
I mean, come on. Yeah.
And then he also represented Emmanuel Lewis from Webster. So I moved to Hollywood, and I'm just this newbie off the boat. And I'm at one of these Hollywood networking parties at this swanky hotel. And I'm trying to play the part of an ingenue. This is like 20 years ago. And I'm dressed to the nines, and I'm putting on this front that I have all this confidence, you know, and I'm worthy of these roles. And I see this man from across the room, and we catch eyes a couple of times, and well, it's a networking party. So finally we meet up, and I'm just trying to, meet all the, directors and producers trying to get a role. And he looks me in the eye. We didn't exchange words. He looks me in the eyes, and he says to me, "Why do you hate yourself so much?"
Whoa.
And I was like, what? I did not know what to say. I did not know what to think. He read into the depths of my soul. He didn't know, I had been battling suicidal tendencies. I had made a couple suicide attempts. I just did not like myself. I was trying to be obedient to God. I was trying to follow him. And I felt like he told me to move to Hollywood and try to pursue this profession where you need everybody to like you. But the problem was I hated myself. Wow. And he just looked into my eyes and said this to me. And it was like, I was just so... I just did not have the words. And for the next several, we started getting together every single day. I would go to his office, and he was like my counselor. He was the first person that taught me how to have self-worth, how to believe in myself. Like when I told him I wrote poetry, most agents or managers would be like, "Oh, well, that's nice." They wouldn't care because they can't monetize it.
Right.
So he's like, "I want to hear him." I was like, "What?" I had never shared the poetry with anyone. And for the next several days, we went to coffee shops and diners and parks, and he had me read every single one. And he told me that they were good and that I should share them with the world. And I was like, never going to plan on sharing them with anyone. And now I have 4 poetry books out. So
That's
he
awesome.
just chipped away at every little part of me that felt not good enough and not worthy. And I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for Marshall Ferguson. God rest his soul.
Come on, Marshall. I love that. And I think as we listen to that, I think it inspires me and hopefully everyone listening. I don't know where you are in your story. You might be where Katherine is, or you might be in the place where Marshall is, where you could be that voice for someone else. And how encouraging and amazing that was to sort of fight the lies of the enemy, and how we are as disciples, like, called to do that for one another when we see that in someone else, to even speak boldly. Like, that was a pretty bold thing Marshall came out of the gate with.
Yeah.
And yet it's exactly what you needed. And how cool is God that he...
And thank God that it wasn't trying to, like, get a date with you, because that's the worst pickup line of all time. Right. Yeah.
Honestly, I have a lot of those stories too.
I'm sure. Yeah.
So what I hear in your story then, obviously with the field you're in, that rejection or hearing negativity from producers or directors or people that have, the role of picking talent for, like, that plays into self-doubt. I'm curious, because I think there's a lot of people out there that are either doubting themselves or unsure. If they're not at full doubt, they're unsure of what God is doing or calling them to, and they're just not sure where to go. And so what else in your story is, would you say, is it all kind of negative feedback from others, or how does self-doubt come into a person's life?
Is this about you? Because I think you're doing a great job.
I'm speaking for a friend.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
God loves you, Zach. All right, go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are you being Marshall to me?
Yes, I'm being your Marshall. Come here.
That's
Come
cool.
here, sweetheart.
It can come from so many places. It can come from, the comparison. It can come from when you get rejection, when you feel like you failed. It's the devil whispering voices in your head. It's your 3rd grade teacher telling you you'll never make it. It could be from so many things, but we know it's not from God. Anything that's making you feel less than or lower than, because we're supposed to be, this light, this city on a hill that cannot be hidden. You can't do that if you're cowering in the corner, ashamed of who you are. So it kind of, in some ways, it doesn't matter where it comes from, but it matters what you do with those lies and that negativity. Like, for me, I never trusted myself. My self-doubt made me, like, if I booked a role, I didn't feel worthy of that role. So then I would tell the producer or director, I could also do craft service. I could do makeup on set. I can run errands for you. And then I would take on 5 extra jobs that I wasn't getting paid for. And then I wouldn't even have time to, like, study my lines and do a good job as the actor I got hired for, because I was burning myself out doing all these other things. Another way it manifested in my life, and some of your listeners, doing everything for everybody else and putting all of your goals and dreams on the back burner, feeling like everyone else is way more important than you, just because we read certain scriptures that say, consider others better than yourself, but they're blown out, taken out of context. Because when God gives you a calling, it's not to not do it and to do everybody else's, because you're going to stand before him one day and he's going to say, what did you do? What I told you to do this. Why didn't you do it? Well, I was busy helping Joe and Sally and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, that's great. But sometimes that's a way of hiding. We overserve and have no time to do our thing. And that's like a fear. We're trying to cover up. We're trying to say, I don't have time for mine. But the truth is, we're really scared and afraid it's not going to work out, or we don't have what it takes. And that's not going to cut it when we stand before God one day and we have to answer. So in Hollywood, I had these ideas for these films, and I'd write these short films and produce them, but I never trusted myself to direct them. And this was always my husband's pet peeve. I would hire all these directors, and every time I was like so mad that they didn't direct it the way I would have. They didn't pull the performances out of the actors. And I would just be complaining to him at the end of the day. He's like, why didn't you direct it yourself? And I was like, well, they have the credits, or they went to film school, or they have the masters, or they have 20 years experience. But God's the one that gave me the vision. And I'm thinking, oh, everybody else is going to be better. And they're not. So whatever dream God has put in your heart, you have to realize no one is going to do it better than you. So
that is good. So I'm going to go off script here for a second. I've always, just thought to myself that Hollywood and Christianity sometimes aren't very congruent. And I'm just wondering, like, have you ever had any problems? Like, have you felt like maybe you didn't get cast for a role because of your faith? Or have you had any, talk a little bit about being a Christian in Hollywood?
Yes, and yes.
Okay. Yeah.
How long do we have? This is what she's saying.
Yeah.
I'm actually writing a book right now about many experiences I've had in Hollywood, and it's tough. It's tough when you're not willing to compromise.
That's what I was wondering. Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
There have been roles I've lost due to faith, due to size, due to being unwilling to do special favors for people. I've lost parts for when they found out I was married. I've lost parts for not doing certain things they want me to do unrelated to the role.
Right.
And you've probably heard certain actresses talk about things they had to do and being humiliated. And I have friends who've lost roles because they wouldn't sleep with the producers. And there's a lot that goes into that. But I think, all we can do is be responsible for what God has given us to do. And if we don't hit some great level of what we think it should be, honestly, the people that compromise to get where they are, they develop drug problems. They develop alcohol problems. They hate themselves. They can't look in the mirror. It's not worth it. I want to be able to sleep at night, even if I don't get to star in that big blockbuster movie. All I can do is walk through the doors God opens for me. And when there's stuff that comes up that I know is not in line with my beliefs, I just have to walk away.
Well, okay. So 2 follow-ups to that. I just wondered if things got better after, the realization of what Harvey Weinstein has done to people, and if Hollywood is actually kind of cleaning up their act a little bit. And then go ahead, speak on that real quick.
I think in some ways, I want to say yes.
Okay.
But what kind of happens is when a light gets turned on, cockroaches run. They flee. But they don't necessarily go anywhere. They just have more covert ways of doing what they've always done. For instance, you'll go to an audition and you'll have to sign an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, that you can't talk about what happens in the audition. So I had a male friend that earned this role, and he got sent to the director's house to work on the scene or whatever. Well, the director, he propositioned all these things, and my friend left, ran, whatever. And he told his agent, he tried to get help from his agent, but this powerful director had already gotten to his agent and made him sign some kind of gag order. And this friend was given $50,000 to never talk about it, to never mention who this was. So is it getting better?
And maybe. Who was it? No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Maybe, I hope so. But at the same time, maybe they're just finding more covert ways to do the things they've always done.
Which is such a shame.
Not out in the open as much.
So I mentioned earlier, I teach at a Christian school, and there's a sweet young 11th grader who's been taking acting lessons for a long time, and she just got an audition for a Netflix series and is very excited about it. And she came to me, and she's actually about to turn 18, and she was saying that the series is kind of provocative, and she's like, so she was in this juxtaposition where she's like, it doesn't really line up with my morals, but oh my gosh, this could be a really big opportunity. This is my first thing. I've auditioned 40 times and never even got a call back. And I was just sitting there thinking, oh, sweet girl, you got You know, you've got so much of your life left. Like, don't sacrifice what you know to be true just for a quick step into the right direction. I'm sure you've probably had situations like that too, where you've looked at the script and you're like, I don't know about this.
You know, and there's some that I've said yes to that I later go, I shouldn't have done that. There's some that I said yes to that I thought later, I really hope my parents never see this. I really hope my kids never see this.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, that's the journey. That's the walk. We're figuring it out. We're not doing it perfectly. And, you know, God sees our heart. You know, we learned that in Samuel. You know, he looks at our intent. And when you're trying to do the right things and be steered in the right direction, there's an evangelist, Cheryl Salem, and she was Miss America in 1980. And when she became Miss America, she got all these different offers. You know, one of them was to pose for Playboy. Well, of course, she said no to that. Like, certain things you see, like, okay, I can tell that's a hard no. But there's other things that, they're on the fence. Like, you don't know. Like, she got asked to be, to host, like, I don't know if it was Entertainment or one of those types of shows, to be a host. And that seems pretty, like, you know, like, maybe that's okay. And she was praying to God, and she was like, please, Lord, please let me do this. I would be out in front. I would be able to tell people about you. I'd be able to lead people to you. I would be making so much. I could tithe so much more. She's praying all this, and God told her no. And she was like, really begging God, like, what? I could do all this. I could bring all these people to you. And God spoke to her and said, before they become like you, you will become like them. Mm. So we also have to think of proximity, of who are we surrounding ourselves with? And yes, we are called to be a light in a dark place, but at the same time, do you have the foundation? Are you ready? Can you stand firm and not be bent by the wind that blows? Are your roots in God deep
Such
enough
a good point. Such a good point.
Not be pulled up. So maybe certain things you're going out for, considering, maybe they're a no for you now because your character cannot keep you where your anointing takes you. Wow. That's why some of these young stars get taken out. They get this fame, and then suddenly they can't handle it, and they're on drugs, or they're this or that. They didn't have the character built within them to see where their stardom took them. So don't despise those small beginnings, that deep work of growing under the ground in the dark where nobody sees you. I know everyone wants to become famous overnight, but that can destroy people's lives. And God doesn't want to put you in a place where you're going to be destroyed. Yeah. So sometimes it feels like we're just crawling. And God, I've been in Hollywood 20 years. Nobody knows who I am. Like, what is this? You start to question yourself. Did I even hear from God? Yeah. But, you know, his timing is not our timing. And we just have to, you know, have that faith that when the time is right, he's going to reveal us.
Good. Bookmark that. Bookmark that. That's our short for this week. If your foundation is not strong enough and you get cast into this life of fame, you can. There's several examples of that people going into pro sports, or, you know, at a young age, and they are a devout Christian, and then they get swept away by the people that are around them, and they're you know, just a figment of their past faith, right?
And only God, knows our story.
Sure,
and knows when we're ready. Like you said, to be working underground in those deep roots, and when or if I'll ever be revealed, or my calling, and so that's where I want to kind of come back to that in you. You know, we've talked a little bit about where kind of self-doubt can come from, even in your story, and you mentioned, you know, that sometimes being focused so much on other people's dreams, sometimes you can sabotage your own. And what I love about you right now is your dream is actually to help other people accomplish their dreams.
Can you help me be famous in 7 days?
No.
Okay.
This isn't about you, Chris.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
I don't even have the track record for that.
I love it. And so that's where I love lining up with God and his will. It's amazing, like, when we line up with him and we have a heart to serve him, we end up serving others. So actually our dream is to help others. And so it's this beautiful, beautiful story. And in my own journey, like I've talked before, just even about being a writer, I think what you maybe experience on the acting side, I've experienced on the writing side of things, of like, I put a book out there and it actually did very well. And I had this identity crisis and like, who am I even as an author? And I was reading other people's stuff and I'm like, they're so much better than I am. And so I want to know, like, from your perspective, like, how do you overcome that self-doubt? I heard so far a couple of things, like having someone like a Marshall speak into your life is a beautiful thing. So speaking positivity. We just talked about being deeply rooted in God and having him as the foundation. So those have already been, so what other like practical things can someone do if they're struggling with self-doubt or feeling unworthy?
Well, I think looking into what the scripture has to say about you, I'm so passionate that people follow their dreams, because I sat on the sidelines of mine for so many years, and like, you read these other authors' books and you're like, wow, I'm not as good as them. You know, it's like that old saying, God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. Yeah. And so if God put a dream in your heart, you're the only one that can do it. Yeah, there's many people whose resumes look better, people who have more experience. But like I say in my You Are Worthy book and course, that God made you on purpose for a purpose with a unique gifting and set of talents and vision that nobody else has. And nobody can do it the way you do it. Nobody can carry out that vision, write that book, write that song in your unique way. And if we are always worrying about someone else and how they're doing it, it's pulling us away from what we should do. And sometimes it's easy to go, well, there's already been these books written on this topic. There's already been songs written on this. But if you took 1,000 people and put them in a room and said, write a story about a little girl traveling cross country with her family, you're going to get 1,000 different stories. If you asked 1,000 artists, draw something about a flower in the desert, you're going to get 1,000 different pieces of art. So we never need to worry if others have the same call as us, because we're all unique and it's not a competition. And this concept was pretty difficult early on for me as an actress, because I would be going to these audition rooms full of all these pretty blondes. Oh, she's prettier, or she's thinner, or she's got a better body, she's got fuller hair. Oh, I should have worn an outfit like that. And so, you know, one of the things I did, I had to really come to terms with not liking my outer package. And so I wrote this book, Poetic Prescriptions for Eternal Youth, examining earthly beauty from a heavenly perspective. And I really had to realize, you know, it's not about my outer shell. They make you think it is because you'll get turned down. Oh, your cankles are too big, or you're taller than the man, or whatever. And, you know, the things God's got for you is meant for you alone. No one can take it from your grasp, not even Barbie's clone. I know they judge you by your size, can't be above an 8, wear double digits, then they eye what you put on your plate. But we're not made from cookie molds. God made us all unique. What makes you special and stands out, they say that you should tweak. The devil wants your focus fixed on all the lot you're not. To see you fail, he'll show your flaws. Don't listen to his plot. Remember this above all else. You're made for God's good pleasure, and you are incomparable. He loves you beyond measure. And he would say, if you would only trust in me, then you would see. You've no need to be aware of them, but only me. Together we'll accomplish all that's in your heart to do. I say that you can have your cake and actually eat it too. The superficial matters not. Yes, most can be ignored, for we can have our heart's desires if we first seek the Lord.
Whew. Man. Come on, Katherine.
I think we got to connect her with Flame, the award-winning rap artist, right. And you two do something together. That would be good. That was awesome.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, you have 4 out of my 5 books are poetry, faith-based self-help poetry.
Well, and I will say this, like, being a youth pastor for 20 years, the number one thing that I see in not just men, but really in young ladies is ever since the advent of social media, comparison has become such an awful thing. And I'm dealing with so many more cases of young girls cutting themselves and images, like they're like just complete self-doubt and putting themselves in situations where they're trying to get value in a way that is never going to bring them value. And,
Yeah.
it's just, it breaks my heart because we know that when we're connected with Jesus, we're going to see more love, joy, peace, patience, and kindness. And I've never in 20 years, I've never had a kid come to me and say, Pastor Chris, I have so much joy. What do I do? Like, how do I give it away? No, but I every day I'm so depressed. I'm so anxious. And so I think that your book, and tell us again, then we'll put it in the show notes, but I think this is a very valuable resource. Show us your book.
The one I just quoted from is Poetic Prescriptions for Eternal Youth. And your viewers can all download this for free just by going to poeticprescriptions.com/free book.
Okay, cool.
I'll give this to
amazing. Awesome.
Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes. So does it come down to, I heard you say, like, going back to scripture, is the worth, does it come back to identity and who we are? Is that really what you think it comes down to?
I think that's part of it. We also, like, even if you, so you can go through the scriptures and you can read, you are fearfully and wonderfully made. Your gray hair is a crown of glory. You can read all the good stuff. And I was doing that, but it still didn't sink in. Like, it still didn't get to me. I still had all these fears and worries and doubts and anxiety and feeling like I wasn't good enough. And so what helped me more than reading about how good God saw me was finding the scriptures that actually said, no, you're not very good. It sounds funny to say that, but that he is the potter and we are the clay. And sometimes we complain, but my vessel's broken, it's cracked, it's ugly. And, God's saying, you know what? I can shine through those cracks. If you looked perfect, you had all your degrees, you came from this great pedigree, you had famous family, then when people looked at your success, they would think it was from you. If you've got everything going against you, then I can shine through you. People are going to know it came from me. And so, like, when I thought, I'm so dumb, I couldn't get into college, I would have these excuses when I felt like God was calling me to write a book. And I was like, I don't even know the difference between a comma and a semicolon. I would find scriptures, instead of how great I am, scriptures like 1 Corinthians 1:27 that says, God has chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise. And God has chosen the weak things of the world to confound the things which are strong. So I said, I could be weak. I could be a fool for God. I could be weak. I could be like, and it gave me hope. Like, I am like this sinful, broken vessel. I'm all messed up, but God can still use me. And so going through, instead of sometimes it's the opposite. It's not finding all the, you're great, you're strong, you're mighty. It's, no, I'm a fool. I'm weak, but God can still use me. And that actually helped me tip over into, now that I see I can be used, then like, now I have hope. It's like when you guys go to the movies, you're not cheering for the billionaire who's this evil, maniacal, looks perfect, you're cheering for the underdog. You want that person that, and so it's weird because sometimes we think I have to be this level of attaining, otherwise people won't hear from me. I won't get to walk in my calling because I don't have it all together. Let me tell you, nobody relates to the person that has it all together. I remember I used to go to this church, and the pastor's wife, she was seemed so perfect. Perfect outfit, perfect wardrobe, perfect car, perfect looks, perfect. And I always felt like I could never attain to that. Like, I could never be as holy as her, as beautiful as whatever. And then one day, after hearing this woman preach for more than 10 years, one day she kind of like lets us in on a real moment. And she's telling us one day about how she got so mad at her kid because he was playing his video games in the middle of the night. She took a baseball bat out and she started smashing his video games.
That is getting real. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
He's just like this wild child, and everything. He was like troubled child. And one time she was supposed to preach the next day. So her husband, the pastor, agreed to take the boy so she could have some quiet time to herself. And he's out the door leaving, and she's like, "Where are you going? Where are you going?" He's like, "Oh, I'm golfing today." Like, "You were supposed to watch the game." He's like, "I can't. I'm already meeting." And she was saying she got so mad at him, she flipped him off, and she double flipped him off with both hands.
Yeah.
And she's telling the story from the pulpit, and I'm like laughing, and I'm
That's great.
crying, and I'm like, yes, yes, I can be like her.
I was going to say,
I can be like her.
that just happened to Zach last weekend, actually.
Which part, the baseball bat or the video games?
Both.
Oh.
That's amazing. I love the realness, though.
Yeah,
That's great.
And I think, you know, one of the phrases I've heard before is people will celebrate you for your strengths, but they'll resonate with you in your weaknesses.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I just think that there's so much truth in that. And what I find fascinating and really amazing about what you just said is there's so many scriptures that can speak positive affirmations of who you are and how God has made you. But I think that that's really encouraging to hear that, and you see it all throughout Scripture, that God just continues to use broken, sinful, messy, and if we're honest, unworthy people. And through His grace, he makes them into beautiful vessels and makes them worthy. And how sometimes, you know, if we're always stuck in the comparison game, like if and listening to those lies of the enemy, the truth is right there in Scripture for us.
Yeah.
If God can work through broken individuals, and if He can do that in the past, and He still does it today. And if there's one thing that I am qualified for, it's to be a broken individual, redeemed by God's grace. And so why can't God use me? Why can't God use you? That was so awesome. So tell me, a little bit more about your book. And I think you have an online course to go with it too, called You Are Worthy, and how it's helping people. Yeah.
Yeah. So You Are Worthy. I wrote this book, and the course goes way more in depth to help people stop building other people's dreams and sabotaging their own so they could step into their purpose and live their calling with confidence. And everything, it's so important because everything we do is determined by how worthy we feel of it. If you don't feel worthy, you're not going to ask that person out. You're not going to ask your boss for the raise. You're not going to start that business, and you're not going to step into your calling. God has called you to do something that's going to make a difference for time and for eternity, to help humanity. But if you go, I'm not worthy, I could never do that, you're thinking out. I mean, Moses did the same thing. I can't speak. I'm not eloquent. Can you get somebody else? And finally God's like, fine. I'm like, bring your brother. But that's not God's original intent. And I think I just want everybody to know that you have everything it takes within you. If God called you, then you're well able to do the things, you're well able to overcome. And God is great at filling in the gaps where you don't measure up. And sometimes the more gaps you have, the better, because the more you're going to count on Him, the more you're going to rely on Him. And some people are like, but I don't know what to do. This is all new, but I feel called. Well, the good news is James 1:5 tells us, if any of you lacks wisdom, he should ask God, who gives generously to all. I love this next part, without finding fault. God gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to him. So we don't have to be like, I'm without finding fault. Can we remember that? And so worthiness is really, when the Scripture tells us to come boldly to the throne of grace, that's not like you walk in there all pompous. That's like you're confident. You're confident that God's going to be there for you, that He's going to hear you, that He's going to answer your prayers. And if you were the only one, God still would have died for you. So what are you waiting for?
Yeah. And at the end of it, right, that's what worth is. It's how valuable you are. And our God has proven to us, not only did He make you, but when each of us has gone astray, he paid the ultimate price, and someone or something is only worth what someone is willing to pay. And God deemed you worthy enough to give His life, which is just so beautiful. I love that word worthy, Katherine. I think whenever, and people may go to different churches, so maybe there's some that don't have this experience, but every now and then I'm in a worship service and there's this spot of music where there is no lyrics, and it's, everybody sing your own song, sing your own tune. And I'm not a singer, and I'm not a songwriter, but for whatever reason, whenever that happens, that's the word that comes back into my brain nearly every time, is just, God, you are so worthy.
Yeah.
And we are worthy because he is worthy. And I just keep settling in on his worth in that moment over and over and over and over again, above all else in this world. And so how powerful that this God who's worthy sees you and I as worthy through his son, Jesus. So, hey, Katherine, we ask all of our guests this question. We ultimately want to